Good morning and welcome to KBC Channel 1 News Check. Today being the 26th day of the 5th month of 2021. Hope you are having a fruitful day. It's a cold and chilly morning right here in the capital, Nairobi. And it's time to check and put things into perspective. And especially when it comes to the state of the nation. You will bear me witness for the last couple of weeks. We have witnessed a lot in the country. And it's only fair and good that we touch on that so that we may know where this country is headed to. When I talk about a lot has been happening, of course, we have the National Prayer Day that is coming up tomorrow. We also have something else that is coming up in the next couple of days. That is the Madaraka Day. That is next week on Tuesday. We also have a new sheriff in the judiciary. That is after judiciary Martha Koome became judiciary's head. We have a lot to talk about. The BBI, of course, the judgment did elicit a lot of reactions right here in the country. We also have IEBC, which is sourcing for new commissioners. And we have seen the president has been quite busy in the last couple of days launching projects. For example, the Lamu Port. We also had the Kenya Meat Commission abate. There are some resistance, of course, in the courts, but we will be delving into that. And also the war on graft. You do remember yesterday EACC did talk about recovering some looted money and said that they will not relent until all the public money or the public funds that have been embezzled has been returned. And it cited 4 governors, both sitting and former. And the political drums just get a little bit noisier. Looking at we have Wajir and also Nyandarua, which are having some of the things that we will be looking at, some tension, and of course, when it comes to politics and democracy, we have to see some of these things. And to help us delve into this matter, I will be joined by 2 formidable gentlemen who will help us delve into that matter much deeper. Of course, we do appreciate your input, your feedback, suggestion, or even questions on all our social media platform at KBC Channel 1. I will be sampling some of them during and at the end of this around 2-hour show. Thank you indeed for joining us. My name is Ben Njue. Welcome. And on my immediate right, I'm joined by an advocate of the High Court and also the Secretary General of the Thirdway Alliance, that is Fred Okango. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
And on my extreme right, we have Job Ndege, a leadership and governance expert. Always a pleasure having you guys.
Thank you, Ben.
Perhaps we can touch on the National Prayer Day, which is scheduled for tomorrow.
Yes.
Of course, the head of state is expected to lead that. And looking at the 2021 job, it's the first time that we were having COVID-19 in the country, and the president said that even science needs prayers. We have been praying. Even looking at KBC, we also have prayers each and every day, so that as a country we'll be able, of course, to emerge victorious on the same. And I can say we've done a lot. Looking at some of the countries that we are seeing the numbers and the deaths, we at least are doing something that is commendable, if you ask me. But looking at the last 2-3 days, we've seen in Kisumu, of course, the former premier has been holding some of, let me not call them political rallies, but political engagements.
Yes.
And that could water down all that, faith without action, as they say, and as the Bible says, is dead. Job.
Yes, thank you very much, Ben. In fact, the prayer day tomorrow is timely. As you said in opening remarks, we have gone through a lot since last year, but thankfully, God has been with the nation. Mm-hmm. And whereas other countries are actually facing it more rough than we are, we seem to be moving on by the grace of God. And the Bible says that a family that prays together basically gets the favor of God. So tomorrow is a good chance for the president and the leadership of parliament and even the judiciary for us to come together in that national prayer day, and we put ourselves before God publicly Hopefully we repent our sins, because that's what we are taught to do, and then pray for God to keep us moving forward. COVID has been a big challenge in the world since it kicked off late the year before, and in these parts of the country early last year. We have been lucky, one, because it has not ravaged us so much. Secondly, because the government, through its Ministry of Health and the task force that it has always, every so often, tried to exhort us and put some rules and policies and procedures that will enable wananchi move in ways that it does not continue spreading the virus the way it should be spreading. Yes, politics before has caused crowds that, in my view, have been spread events, and we have seen, even out of the world, in India, this surge that actually we are witnessing there happened when they unleashed, after elections, that there was some prayer pilgrimage. Yes. And there were a lot of people who gathered with those pilgrimages, and that really caused the issue they have in India. So COVID does not like crowds. It does like crowds where social distance maintained. It doesn't like crowds where there is no mask. It doesn't like crowds where there is enclosure, where people are enclosed together. So any activity that we do, from politics to our everyday lives, if we don't adhere to those protocols, then we are standing in danger. So you say that the Prime Minister was in Kisumu yesterday in an effort to meet his base. Those people who are going to those crowds, they have to take care. They must mask up, they must keep distance, they should not crowd together, because if they do, then it only takes one person within a small crowd or a large crowd to actually become a super spreader. And that's very dangerous for us. So just that the president had banned all this. The president actually banned political gatherings. He has not lifted it. When he lifted movements from the disease-affected counties, he did not actually open up gatherings for politics. So I'm sure when the Prime Minister, as he goes around, he knows that, and he must be urging his protocol to ensure that the people who come around him are not so many to cause problems, because that can be very, very risky.
Indeed. Fred, it's a time that we need to reflect as a country and also perhaps take stock of what we have done, the steps that we have taken as a country. Kenya being quite a prayerful country, but sometimes you find that the same people who tell us to do ABCD are the same are the first ones to break even the rules that are there in the Bible.
On 21st, last year in March, we had a National Day of Prayer. And in his proclamation to the nation, President Uhuru Kenyatta quoted a Bible verse in a letter from St. Paul to the Philippians, Philippians 4:6-9. And it says in parts that don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. In this country, we have all the reasons to pray about everything. As you rightfully put it, we are a nation that is 80% religious. In other words, we believe in God. Whether you're a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, whichever religion you profess, but we believe in God. And therefore, worldwide, National Day of Prayer is an observance day that people submit themselves to God for prayers. And what people don't know is that this day is actually organized by Parliament. So it is a day that the National Parliament organizes themselves and submit themselves and the nation through all arms of government for prayer. If you look at what is happening in this country, I think it is time that we reflect. The toxicity of politics, in a way, has been lowered by limited movement, limited interaction, courtesy COVID. However, we still have situations where politics is high. We are talking about the president going to visit, or rather going to lead the celebration of Madaraka Day in Kisumu. And already we have seen Prime Minister Raila Odinga preparing his people to receive the guest, who is the president. That is a political activity. While we might be very careful with COVID, we might try everything possible to ensure that we abide by the containment measures, but politics runs in our blood as a country. In fact, Kenyans are political in nature. So I would not rule a situation where the crowd will always gather around politicians. In this country, there are only 3 politicians that when they walk out, even when they're just going their business, people will always gather just to say hi to them. President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, William Ruto. Those are key leaders that people look forward to. And every time they speak, people listen because there's something new or there's something that people would want to know what is happening. So in my view, as we approach the prayer day tomorrow, 3 things. Number 1, the president, as he leads the nation together with parliament, must remember that this country needs all of us. Number 2, the politicians, as they attend that prayer day, they must remember, after the prayer day, this country will need them and will need them too. So that the utterances they make, and I'm speaking, me included as a politician, we must ensure that those utterances are uniting and not dividing. Then lastly, we are at a time when things have changed. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way we interact. It has changed the way we behave. It has changed the way we consume even news, we consume information. We must always remember that that is not going to change anytime. In fact, scientists also project that we are likely to live with COVID for a very long time, and therefore life must go on and we must adapt. So politics will come, but our lives will remain. The most important thing, we must do the right thing.
Indeed. And I'll say amen to that, seeing you have a mastery of the Bible. And we are hoping that at least Kenyans will add that voice, and let's do exactly what the prayers are meant for. Away from that, this is the 3rd day, touching on perhaps on the judiciary. We have a new sheriff in town, Martha Karambu Kome, becoming the 3rd Chief Justice under the new constitutional dispensation, and the first woman head of the judiciary arm of government. Joe, perhaps you can touch on that. I was in that event on Monday at the Supreme Court, and of course a lot of people lauded her efforts, and especially when it came to matters fighting for human rights and children's rights. Now we are having a new CJ, and away from her being the first woman in the country, she finds a full in tray, looking at of course, we will be talking about the 5-judge bench judgment appeal, which of course has been launched, yet to be heard. But what is your take on what she expects in the judiciary? Remember, her together with Justice Ouko, they were at the Court of Appeal. Now we have a new sheriff also at the Court of Appeal. What should we expect, and what does her in-tray hold?
Thank you, Ben. What we are going to expect from the judiciary under Chief Justice Martha Koome, she laid it out on her speech. Luckily, she has had like 2 occasions to speak from the time that she was sworn in and she took an oath. 3 things come out. The budget allocation to the judiciary. The judiciary needs money for it to be able to carry out some of these transformative and even expansive things that the judiciary wants to do. 2, independence. She took it upon herself to echo what the Justice Maraga, the past Chief Justice, was standing for, which is independence of the judiciary. There were some doubts when Chief Justice Koome was sworn in about her independence, more so given that night ruling that happened in the Court of Appeal in 2017. But she has come out to affirm that she believes in the independence of the judiciary, and she's going to ensure that that independence does not get eroded. The 3rd thing she talked about was corruption. Corruption in the judiciary is always highlighted and spotlighted. Why? Because unlike the other arms of government, the judiciary largely does not get people electing them to those positions. They're appointed. So if there is any whim or any thought or suggestion that there could be some practices in there that point to corruption, then there needs to be a way to sort them out. And I know since 2010, you've had the radical surgery, you've had the Sharad Rao, board vetting magistrates and judges. But still, people are not fully satisfied in how corruption should be fought in the judiciary. Hence, I think when the BBI task force was formed and went around, there was all this issue about the judiciary ombudsman. So that's something that Justice Koome needs to boldly come out and deal with. Whereas she spoke about it in a speech, she needs to tell everyone that this is how I want to fight corruption in the judiciary, because there is corruption in the judiciary. So taking all these three things, and then the fact that she is a lady, which puts more pressure on her compared to her predecessors, because this is the first time that in independence Kenya that a lady Chief Justice has come to the helm. So what difference will she make in there? So things corruption, things the backlog. She also mentioned the fact that she wants in her tenure the judiciary to make sure that if you have a case in the courts, that case should not last there more than 3 years. In fact, one of our promises was that she'll ensure that the case log is reduced to less than 3 years. That would be something which is very good, because it's going to help in delivery of justice. So I see those 4 parameters or pillars being the things that she's going to drive, and things that we, as the consumers of justice, are going to measure Justice Martha Koome on that. And then lastly, on the Supreme Court itself, there has been a feeling that the Supreme Court is not moving fast enough to deal with the matters that reach it. It doesn't have a backlog as it is, but typically it takes quite a long time to get a matter past that court. It's my hope that because Justice Koome has been in the system for long, and even Justice Ouko, that they'll use their skills and experience to see that justice in the Supreme Court gets expedited, even as they deal with all the other matters of judiciary from the lower courts.
Yeah. Yes. And Fred, you're also an advocate, and you also talked about
Actually,
corruption.
I'm not an advocate. A lot of people believe I am.
You are indeed, and of course, you've represented your party in several press conferences, talking also about leadership in the country, and of course, war on graft. We also have the new CJ. Of course, she has a full entry, as also Job has talked about, and looking at also the upcoming appeal that we expect at the courts, and the timelines, and especially when we talk about the BBI judgment of which is being appealed. Looking at the timeline, do we really have the time to hear all the appeal and proceed, bearing in mind that we have around 14 months to the general elections?
Thank you. First of all, let me congratulate Honorable Lady Chief Justice Martha Koome once again. Her suitability, competency and capability, there's no doubt about that, from what we have seen before and from our interaction with her as a judge in the Republic of Kenya. Number two, I think that in her speeches, one thing she kept on saying is the independence of the judiciary, as established in Article 160 of the Constitution of Kenya. And if you read the Article 160 of the Constitution of Kenya, in exercising the authority of the judiciary, it can only be subjected to one thing called the Constitution of Kenya and the rule of law. And I believe that Justice Martha Koome, or Chief Justice Martha Koome, will be looking at that very keenly in dispensing justice. Number two, how come in the Republic of Kenya, as stipulated in the Constitution, presidential petitions, the petitioners have got 7 days to file a petition, and the Supreme Court has got 14 days to hear and determine that matter conclusively, and their verdict is final. These are the matters that we have seen in the Court of Appeal lying there, we have seen in the High Court lying there, can take you from there. What I'm trying to say is dispensation of justice is possible within the shortest time possible when the applicants, the petitioners, are willing and the judiciary is willing. That is what we need to abide by. Number two, in the issue of BBI, at the risk of not sounding sub judice, because this is a matter that is already been filed, I wouldn't want to go into the the substance of the issues.
Yes.
But I want to talk about facts. This country, where we are today, we all know the challenges that we are facing. Those challenges are more political than legal. Legal scholars will tell you that there's a legal solution to every challenge in the world. Political scholars will tell you there's more of political solutions to legal challenges. And therefore, I believe that the Court of Appeal, well, they'll be looking at this matter, they'll look at it with a lens of justice, with a view that they'll be fair. The President, when he was swearing in Justice Ouko and the Lady Justice, my Lady Martha, he did say that they should always strive to be fair, because in justice dispensation, fairness is very important. I am confident that with the time we have enough time to do the right thing. Why? We have enough time to do the right thing because what the appellants will be seeking is to reconsider the decisions that were made at High Court. This is a situation where the learned bench, the 5-judge bench, made a decision that IEBC as constituted today is unconstitutional because they lack quorum. And they based their argument on a statute, not on the Constitution Article 250, sub-article 1, that requires that all constitutional commissions must have a minimum of 3. However, the same IEBC, 2 days ago, presided over the election of the President of Court of Appeal with that illegality as it is, what they call illegality. So in my view, I think all these things are political, and therefore, as a politician,
yes,
and somebody who believes in law, and somebody who has studied law, I believe that it is important that now we do what is called legal political practice, because it is in our interest as the people of Kenya to get the best. But we cannot get the best if our institutions that are tasked with offering solution are the hindrance or the hurdle. So we must collaborate. Justice Martha Koome, when she'll be going into the chambers to look at ways of ensuring that justice is dispensed to the people of Kenya, she'll be considering the interest of the people. She'll be considering what is at stake. She'll be considering the law. But above all, former Chief Justice David Maraga always reminds the bench and the judicial officers that always remember that the fear of the Lord is important. And that's why I keep saying, if you look at our politics today, we are at a crossroad. We are at a crossroad because we believe that we are not able to balance between politics and law. We are able to balance between politics and law. I don't see why the Court of Appeal is not able to determine the matter that will be filed before them and let guys move. Whatever decision they arrive at, if it's a decision that people who went there don't believe with, they can proceed to Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court make a final determination, then we can go forward knowing very well that we have put these things aside. But I can tell you, the people of Kenya, they want a situation where in the villages, they have got water, electricity, food, shelter. They want a situation where the young people of this country have got jobs. They want a situation where the devolution is strengthened, adopting the word as a primary unit of accelerated development. And they want a situation where our women are all included in the leadership because they are suitable and capable. That one requires that we look at the supreme law of this country, which causes constitution, and we amend it so that we accommodate all these views from Kenyans. That wish has been expressed by the people of Kenya. You cannot express it in a court of law.
Okay, indeed. We will of course be touching on the same, but without going to the specific, as of course Fred has talked about. Of course, it's would be sub judice because it's already a matter in court. And thanks for clearing that on the advocate part. We've rubbed shoulders with you in court so many times when you've been.
You know, not all lawyers are advocates.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah, he's a lawyer, not an advocate of the High Court. But before we do that job, before we come to you, let's first of all look at the Commission on Revenue Allocation is having a launch of counties' own source of revenue report, which they are currently launching at the Sarova Stanley Hotel. We'll be right back with this conversation. Okay, as soon as we are ready with that, we'll be crossing over to the Sarova Stanley. Perhaps, Job, you can rope in on the same. Yes. And looking at, of course, the appeal is being really, a lot of people are waiting for it. And yes, perhaps you can add on the same your input on Article 257 talks about how we as Kenyans can change the constitution, but yes, there's also the parliamentary. Perhaps we can touch on the same. Yes. If this option A fails, is there time and yes, is there a quorum for option B? Perhaps you can touch on that. Yes,
adding on to what Fred was talking about, one other thing that the people of Kenya want is peace. It's very important. You have noticed that every time we go for elections, we fight, we waste a year to the election, another year after the election. We lose so much money and energy. We suffer.
Allow me, just apologies, let me interject so that we may first of all cross over to the Stanley, Sarova Stanley. Then we will be right back with this discussion. Let's head there and we'll be right back after we hear how the counties are performing.
Process of engaging a consultant to develop a national rating legislation to replace the Valuation Rating Act CAP 266 and the Rating Act CAP 267. The Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development is developing a national trade bill which is expected to harmonize business licensing countrywide. The State Department of Transport has constituted a multi-agency team to come up with recommendation on harmonization of cess, other fees, levies charged by counties on transporters. I would also wish to point out that the National Treasury continues to receive complaints from various government agencies as well as private sector about instances where revenue-raising measures by counties is interfering with regulatory processes or disrupting business activities contrary to Article 209(5) of the Constitution. To address this situation, the National Treasury, jointly with the actors, drafted the County Government Revenue Raising Process Bill 2020, which is currently before Parliament, awaiting consideration. The legislation outlines the process to be followed by counties in exercising their powers under Articles 209 and 210 of the Constitution to impose, vary, or waive taxes, fees, levies, and other charges. Further, the National Treasury is in the process of implementing the Presidential Directive on development of a single revenue collection system integrated with the national government systems to be used across all 47 counties to help address the challenges faced by counties in procuring individual revenue management systems. Ladies and gentlemen, the training on on-source revenue for county governments so far has been done on an ad hoc basis by different organizations, including private firms, government agencies, and development partners. Although many trainings have been conducted, country government staff and policymakers still lack adequate capacity to fully execute their own source revenue administration and legislation role. We therefore commend the CRA for spearheading the development of guidelines for training county governments on on-source revenue administration and legislation through a multi-agency task force. This will strengthen the technical capacity of both the county executives and the county assemblies in on-source revenue administration and ultimately improve on-source revenue performance. Finally, I'm looking forward to our various institutions working together in implementing of the on-source revenue report and the training guidelines. Thank you, and God bless you. Julius Njue, PhD, CBS, Principal Secretary, National Treasury.
That is a live feed from the Sarova Stanley, where the Commission on Revenue Allocation is launching a report on counties when it comes to revenue allocation. And perhaps, Job, you can touch a minute on the same. Talked about challenges on county revenue management being the first one. We've seen some counties are doing quite well when it comes to revenue allocation, while some are lagging behind. Counties also, they've noted that they are heavily reliant on the national government.
Yes.
And also cutting down on wastages. Perhaps, yes, gentlemen, we can touch on that
sure.
In a minute.
Yes, and Ben, that has been the hallmark of devolution, actually, since this kicked in. We find that most counties stopped, or they are not getting as much revenue from their own source. In fact, in some countries, they are getting less than the county councils of before. And that's a problem. The counties must use devolution to enable local capacity, to enable production. I know it has been a problem with the counties complaining, and a bit of that has been genuine, that the services that were devolved, the money never really followed them properly. For instance, health. For sure, health, the amount of money that goes to the counties is minute compared to actually how much should have gone for devolution. But be that as it may, there's still a lot of work that counties need to do themselves. The little money that they have, they need to build capacity, they need to build production, such that as they get the national revenue, they're also collecting enough. And if they don't collect enough, then that deficit will be growing year in, year out. They'll be asking for more money from national government, they'll be collecting even less, and even the less they collect, there's a lot of pilferage and wastage. That's why there was a time that there was a cry that can we have a unified county finance management system which can take in all the counties. That has not happened as yet. So each county does its own thing. Of course, they are all in IFMIS at one point or the other, but in terms of the local collection and everything, they do their own things. That can be streamlined. Secondly, is how do we ensure that there is enough accountability at the local level? That has also been an issue, because the people who are tasked with the local level accountability are the MCAs. But the law as it is, and that's one of the things that the BBI was actually going to sort, the law as it is that the MCAs can only use money that has been appropriated to them with the goodwill of the county government. The person you are supposed to supervise and oversight is the one whom you determine for your daily living. That will never work. So the BBI had this proposal where now the county assemblies were going to have their own fund, direct, just like the county governments have their own fund. So that will have given that independence that the county assemblies require for them to do that. The third thing is about capacity of the county assemblies themselves. I know this is something which is contentious, where some people ask, how will the county assembly be able to oversight the county government in some cases where there is a very wide disparity in knowledge and education? Is it time that education qualifications for the MCS, for instance, is relooked at to the level where the Constitution actually thought it should have been? Because this has been suspended now twice. It is debatable. Some people say you don't need academics for you to lead, but in another case, you are never going to comprehend complex matters if you are not able to have that knowledge and the skills to do that. So that's something that I think needs to be done so that the county assemblies have enough capacity. And if they cannot build it themselves because of their own capacities, then there needs to be some structural adjustment that we need to make the county assemblies to provide proper oversight for them. Just like the National Assembly MPs have researchers and all those people, we can do the same and empower the county assemblies if we don't require very stringent knowledge and academics to be able to have such offices to assist them in the oversight role, because that's actually lacking. Most governors get away with it because of lack of comprehension, or because of them controlling the pulse,
yes,
that actually enables these MCAs to do their duties.
Indeed, and we will touch on that after EACC released a report yesterday. But Fred, you can touch on the same. Being the Sec.Gen of Thirdway, you, and in your clamor for constitutional amendments in your Punguza Mizigo, you really did touch on a lot of resources and how they are managed in counties. Kindly touch on the same. No, according to how CRS are saying.
If you look at what they're saying,
yes,
there's a constitutional principle of devolved government that requires that the counties must have reliable sources of funds to enable them govern their own affairs. That is a constitutional principle. It means they must have it. They shall have. And therefore, to this extent, they get that equitable share from the national government collection, while the other counties that also collect their own revenue. Number two, these resources are meant to ensure that they are spent on the developmental expenditure in the county, and that's what that's why they are county revenue allocation. If you look at their allocation that has been happening, the development is around the county headquarters. When you go beyond the county headquarters, there is no development. However, with the advent of devolution, so many things have happened that are very good and are admirable. Now, in our clamor for constitutional amendment, Punguza Mizigo and BBA, if you look at them keenly, actually that's one thing that they have in common. Now we adopt the ward as the primary unit of accelerated development. That means you increase the resources. These resources now go to the ward so that you start measuring development bottoms up. There are people who have been talking about bottoms-up approach in this country, but they have no legal basis on how it is going to happen. For us, proponents of constitutional amendment, we are talking about it with a basis. Number two, if you look at what he has said, the criteria of revenue allocation is a constitutional provision. The Building Bridges Initiative came up with two more criteria that were not there in the question before. One of them, the need to fight corruption. So, in allocating revenue, you look at the counties, how are they doing in terms of fighting corruption? The other one is the need of achievement of the socioeconomic provisions in Article 43. Those are rights. How are those countries achieving those aspects of socioeconomic health, right to education, right to food? How are they? So that when you're allocating money, you look at those areas. Those are two new ones that we must look at. Then, every 4 months, the control of budget of this country gives a report to the National Assembly on how the counties are spending the money that has been allocated to them. That report forms the basis of checks on how that money is utilized. Then the Auditor General, after every 6 months, also gives us another report. If you combine the two reports, you will realize that in this country, wastage is not even wastage. Wastage is another word of utilization of funds in this country. In fact, all the 47 county governors in equal measure are culpable. All of them, in one way or another, they have misappropriated funds, knowingly or unknowingly. And that's why you see governors are being impeached, even though they cling to power. They're being impeached. If we are to go the proper way, all these 47 governors will be home today. So, what we must ensure we do, even when we allocate funds, 35% to the counties, if that come to happen, and some of us are pushing for that proponents of constitutional amendment, then one of the things that we must do, we must go back and check also the responsibility of citizens as provided for in that Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020. It is also the responsibility of citizens to fight corruption, because when you leave corruption to be fought by the police, the DCI, and EACC, then we are not helping each other. As a citizen, it is my responsibility now, as proposed, also to help in fight corruption. Lastly, revenue allocation is a very emotive issue. Emotive in the sense that the reason why the Constitution came with objects and principles of devolved government is to ensure that now we decentralize power with its resources. And he mentioned something that is very important as a principle in the Constitution. Resources follow functions. These functions that have been devolved, how much more are we allocating to those to functions so that they are achieved. Otherwise, we'll be talking about what is on paper and not achievable in practical life. So what we are saying is that today, as the Commission of Revenue Allocation talks about that in terms of revenue allocation, collection, it is important that at a time when the country is not doing very well, at a time when tax collections are not meeting their targets, at a time when the country economy is melting, we must be innovative and creative in terms of revenue collection at the county level, so that the counties do not entirely rely on the national collection of the at least 15% that they expect, because that money, we might not achieve it. And that's why the proponents of BBI came with what is called shared prosperity and economy, where you expand the sources of funds and you establish things to do with pastoralism, blue economy, digital economy as sources of livelihood. And if you create such, then you now expand the tax base. It means more money will be coming, more people will be paying. Then you can now start funding counties proper. I can tell you, today when you go to the counties, you will realize that at the county headquarters, very nice buildings, very nice infrastructure, but try driving inside in the villages, you'll realize we're still lacking. How do we ensure that now we have a model of development where you drive into county A, ward B, the development is just like the one in Nairobi County B, ward C. That one requires resources to go down. That one requires the people to accept that the leadership that you must put in place must be a leadership that knows about fund use, knows about resource control, knows about protection of resources and avoids wastage. The governor of Wajir is today out of office because of misappropriation, because of gross misconduct, violation of the constitution and relevant statutes in regards to financial management. But there are certain people who still believe that he must stay in office. The other day you talked about, when I was saying that, I saw him saying that he is still the governor. People get court orders to protect them from thievery. I mean, we must be very careful as a people if we want to prosper. We must be very careful with people who get into office to steal. We must be very careful with institutions that protect thieves. And that's why I keep saying, for us to grow and move forward as a nation, which will be admired in the region and worldwide, we must first start with the leadership. Look at the leadership. The laws will be there. There are so many laws of corruption, I mean anti-corruption laws. But those laws are not respected. So start with the leadership and then fix the leadership, then now implement the law, then we'll be good to go.
Indeed. That is on revenue allocation. Of course, there's a lot. We've seen the Auditor General, of course, coming up with the numbers that even counties talk about. No, we have not misappropriated this money, of which the records do show that a lot has been mismanaged or wastage, as our friend has talked about. But we will be getting back after this short break when we'll touch about the constitutional amendment. Of course, there are two ways. According to the Constitution, there are two ways that we can amend the Constitution, and we will be looking at the other option other than the 257, the Article 257 one. We will be looking at the parliamentary way of amending the Constitution and what options do the BBI proponents do have when there is also limited time to do the same. Let's take the first short break. We'll be right back with more.